Hello, everybody. This is Normal Sunseed Pass, also known as Normal Sunseed, whatever really, and I'm coming to y'all today with my first tutorial. So I ran this game on stream a couple of times, and some people were asking me about how exactly it works and how the category is. And well, I thought it'd be best to just make something to show you all. So this is gonna be a pretty scuffed tutorial, but hopefully I can include everything and y'all can get some enjoyment out of it. So first off, what is Going Quackers? Going Quackers is a Disney game that was made and released on a million different consoles uh, with a million different iterations. So for the sake of this tutorial, I'm only going to be talking about the GameCube iteration. I'm sure plenty of other iterations are amazing. I've only played the GameCube one. From my knowledge, the PS2 one is the most comparable to the GameCube, but I don't know if there's any like niche things or things under the hood that makes it different from the GameCube. So, Going Quackers is a platformer in which you play as Donald Duck, progressing through several different worlds to save, I guess, his girlfriend? Question mark. I actually don't know the lore all that much, but it's a fun platformer. It's very easy to play. Anyone can pick it up and get some enjoyment out of it. And yeah, I started playing this game because I was interested in some platformers, and it looked like a lot of fun. I enjoyed Donald Duck as a character, so I got the game. Now, this specific tutorial is about the boss rush category, which is a category that I essentially made up or invented. Technically, all categories are so, but something that I made up or slash invented for the sake of having a faster way to play through the game and getting some enjoyment out of it without doing the standard run. So the standard runs are quite long. They're at least 40 minutes plus, depending on where you're playing it from. GameCube tends to be a little slower. I believe GameCube's around. I think the fastest GameCube time for the regular category is like 44 minutes. But Boss Rush is great because you get to fight all the bosses back to back, and the runs are like 10 minutes or less, which is awesome. Now though, there is a few things that you're going to need in order to play this game, play this category. The first thing, of course, is you're going to need finish save data. You are going to need to finish the game. If in the future there's interest from this tutorial, I'd be down to make tutorials for how to actually play the main game. All the maps are pretty straightforward, but there are some fun things that you can do to optimize your gameplay if you're willing to do it, if you want to do a speed run of it. Great. So with that in mind, let's switch it over to the gameplay. All right. So I already have completed save data. And as you can see in the upper left corner, I have my splits created. So splits are used to track the time of which you are doing the run. And for this category, I'll break down how the splits are done a little bit later. So for now, let's load in our save data. And I will show some of the most basic parts of the game, which are the controls. So when you load a save data, you end up in this room. This is like the main hub room. Fun room. Because the save data has beaten the game, I have all the worlds unlocked. Total of 1, 2, 3, 4 worlds, which means there are 4 bosses, as you could probably tell from the splits. For movement, you use the regular stick. You can also use the D-pad. The jump is A. The cool thing about this jump is, among a million other games worth of jumps, you can hold the A for a mightier jump, or you can tap the A for a smaller jump. Not very relevant for boss fights, except for, I guess, the third one, but we'll get to that when we get to that. And then finally, the last thing you have to worry about for controls is the B button. The B button is how you attack, which is essential to dealing damage to the bosses. Now that we're done with controls, let's talk a bit about health. In this game, you have 2 health, meaning if you get hit 2 times, you lose. Your character perishes. If you pick up a health while you're injured, you get the heal health, of course. If you pick up a health while you're not injured, you become what's known as Hyper Donald, which is very useful when you're playing the game because it lets you destroy structures, but it's not useful at all for boss fights. So, in other words, you don't really need to pick up any health which are these little blue boxes that you'll see, unless you actually get injured. Cool. Now, with that introduction out of the way, we're going to go to the first world right here. So this first world is, I guess, like, I don't know, base first world. I don't really know how to describe it. The forest. It's a bunch of forest levels. And then you reach the first boss, which is Bernadette. So let's go and check out Bernadette. So how Bernadette works is, like every other boss, she has 3 health. 3 health, which means you have to hit her 3 times. And like every other boss, she runs on a cycle. So a cycle in gaming basically is a pattern of actions that either a boss does, or a minion does, or a creature or something does, whether it be movement, attacks, etc., that is predictable in nature. So Bernadette's cycle is cut into 2 phases for each health. So the first phase of her cycle is where she kind of throws eggs at you. And then the second phase in her cycle is where she herself tries to drop on top of you. So if I were to unpause, you'll see she's throwing eggs at me. Now, in these eggs, you can either have nothing, or you can have little chicks. And these little chicks will chase you and damage you. Now that the cycle is over, she's going to try and hit us. So, as you just saw, I damaged her. How did I damage her? Well, how Bernadette functions with the chicken drop cycle, I guess I'll just loosely call it that, is she tries to fall on top of you X amount of times, where X is her health added on by 1. So the first time she drops it, she'll only drop 1 time, and then she'll jump in front of you, to which you're able to jump up and hit her in the head to deal her damage. But the second time, so on her second health, she will attempt to hit you twice, and then the third time, it'll be 3 times. Cool. So let's see the second cycle. Once again, she's throwing eggs at us. You'll notice that these eggs are being thrown in front of us. There's actually a manipulation for this boss. As you'll quickly see that there's manipulation for other boss. That's a health, so that's a blue box. That's 2 hits. And there you go. Now she only has 1 health. Now, I did talk about manipulation. So, Bernadette, because she's trying to fall... So, for the egg dropping, if you stand still, she'll throw the egg at you, to which you can move front or back a few steps and then turn around and hit the egg. So, in other words, she won't be throwing the eggs in the path of your movement. You'll be able to just jump out of the way, then come back, destroy the egg, etc., etc. You kind of want to hit the eggs because it speeds up the process a teensy bit, but also removes enemies for you to deal with on the battlefield. Now, the second part of manipulation for Bernadette is herself. So when she's dropping on top of you, if you are closer to her after she drops, then she has to travel less distance to drop subsequently, meaning that as long as you're closer to her and then inch forward out of the path when she falls down, you will make her go up and crash down at the fastest speed, so you'll be able to hit her evidently faster. So let's see her on the next stage. Do you see? I'm still, so she's throwing it at me. I move up, and I just destroy the eggs. Up, back, eggs. Up, back, eggs. Up, back, eggs. He's a very simple and straightforward boss. Okay, I'm just inching forward. And there we go. After you beat a boss, you want to mash A to skip the cutscene. And then after this loading, you'll get presented with a "Do you wish to save?" So that means the fastest way to get out of it would be to press B. So in other words, every time you beat a boss, you want to mash A to skip the cutscene, and then mash B to skip the save scene. Or the save screen, sorry. Alright, now that we've beaten Bernadette, we can move on to the second boss, which is the Beagle Boys. Beagle Boys is debatably the most difficult boss in the game, because that has the most amount of things to pay attention to aside from the last boss. So here is kind of like the town map or the town field. Each one is kind of like a city. And then here's the Beagle Boys. So jump in here. We're going to mash A to skip the cutscene. Great. So you'll see that the field is a giant wrecking ball, 3 people, 3 health again, and kind of like a stage that you're on. So Beagle Boys is also broken down into, of course, cycles. As I've explained, every boss has a cycle. There's 3 phases in his cycle. The first phase is the initial wrecking ball phase, where the wrecking ball is trying to fall on top of you. Second phase is a bomb phase, where they're throwing bombs at you. And the third phase is when the wrecking ball is swinging at you, and you have to make the wrecking ball hit them to knock them down so you can hit them and deal damage to them. Let's see what that looks like. You can see it's falling down. And you'll notice that I'm already doing the next manipulation strat that I'll show. For now, let's just focus on this initial cycle, and then I'll talk about the manipulations. And there's the wrecking ball. And there's the knockdown. After you hit him, it will spawn a health that you can pick up and heal if you need it. If you don't need it, I don't suggest picking it up because in case you get hit, good to have available to you. Now, one thing to note is that it does get a little harder each phase, as you would imagine, like Bernadette did. So now, when the wrecking ball drops, it will destroy the part underneath Donald, or where the ball hits, rather. And then on his last health, it'll destroy 2 squares, so the square it hits and the square next to it, underneath it. And then they'll also throw, I believe, a few more bombs and stuff like that. Great, so let's talk about the manipulation tactics. So you can manipulate both the wrecking ball on both phases and the bombs. So how do you manipulate the wrecking ball? So for the wrecking ball smash, it's the same concept as Bernadette. If you're under it, you'll trigger it faster than if you're far away from it, has to travel farther. How do you manipulate it on phase 3 when it's swinging? Well, that takes practice, but essentially you need to figure out, because it does move kind of like a pendulum, whether or not you're in range for it to twist back and hit the person. Optimally, you want to have the wrecking ball manipulated to the point where on the first swing it hits them, because if it takes any longer than that, you could be losing time on your splits if you're speedrunning this. But essentially, that's how you do it. And then for the bombs, if they do the bomb motion, so if you listen to the sound effects, when they throw a bomb, you kind of hear like a sound. That's the sound that indicates that the target for the bomb is locked in, the placement for the bomb is locked in. So if you were to run to a corner and hear the sound, you can run to the other side and it's not going to hit you, and then you can keep on repeating that, and essentially you'll have dodged the bombs. So let's see what phase 2 looks like. You can see I'm directly under, and I'm just inching forward or inching to the side, and you can see he's destroyed the square. And then here's the bombs. Wait for the sound. There you go. And I'm just doing jumps to ensure that it's not going to hit me. You can see I'm working with the wrecking ball to get it to turn and hit. And that's the next phase. That's obviously not optimal because you would want the wrecking ball to hit faster, but something you'll get used to later on. There's also this concept where if your timing gets really good for the second cycle, so during the bomb cycle, you can kind of like put the wrecking ball in an easier position to manipulate during the swings, so you can hit them easier. But that's really tricky to deal with, and it's something that you kind of get better from the feeling. All right, so all that's changed on this cycle is that the wrecking ball now destroys 2 squares. So let's finish up the boss. So once again, I'm just gonna inch forward, Run out of the way. To the side, run out of the way. You don't want to fall down. If you fall down, you will die. And if you hit by the wrecking ball on phase 2, chances are you will die. Or yeah, phase 3, I guess. Whatever word, either 2 as in has 1 health, so like 3 minus 2, or 3 as in the final phase of the boss fight. So you'll see the wrecking ball couldn't possibly make it to me, so it moved another way. That's another way you can do it. And that's it for the boss fight. So we're gonna A to skip. You can do that much earlier, but skip. And then B to get through the save, sorry. And we're already almost done. We have 2 bosses left. We have Magica the spell and the final boss, Merlock. So let's dive into Magica. This is like a haunted house set of levels. Now, Magica is a very simple boss with a lot of moving parts, as you'll see with Merlock, the final boss. So her cycle, Magica, is made up of 3 phases, like Beagle Boys. The first phase is where she casts a ground-reliant spell that kind of like damages the ground. And the second phase is where she does like a sky attack, so it like comes from the sky and hits down on some places. And then the final one where she summons skeletons and goes into an area where you can hit her. And you have to hit the skeletons' heads so they fling up in the air and hit her. So let's see what that looks like. So she should cast it twice because she has full health. You'll understand that there's like a pattern, right? So every time they get hit, they kind of increase the amount of times they do everything. Here's that sky attack I talked about. I'm sure there's a better term for it. And then here's where she summons the skeletons. And you have to hit their helmets, or sorry, their skulls, to damage her. That's 1 health. And then she'll clear it by damaging those. So that's general base stuff, right? But manipulation, as I've mentioned with every boss. So you can manipulate 2 things in this fight. One is the skeletons, but it's not a very like set in stone manipulation tactic. And 2, Magica the spell, which is a little more consistent, which is the boss, of course. So for the skeletons and Magica combined, the route of which she summons is she'll summon the 3, and then on her last stock or last health, she'll summon summon 3 skeletons, 2 skeletons, 1 skeleton. The 3 comes from all ends. The 2 comes from the 2 sides. The last one comes from like the middle-ish, and sometimes it's going left and sometimes it's going right. And then Magica's route of moving is more reliant on both your characters, but also the damage. So the most cleanest way of manipulation that I have found is to focus on the left side for the first 2 health, and then the right side for her last health. So I'm going to show you kind of what I mean here. And so I try to stay in this area, because when she summons her skeleton, she'll summon 1 on this end and 1 on the other end. But since I'm also in this area, I'm going to be right where she summons the skeleton when she comes out. So I'll be able to essentially hit the skeleton head, which will damage her faster. The only thing I have to watch out for is that she doesn't cast a spell in this space when I want to run back to deal damage. And you see, I was able to injure her much faster than last time. And then for the last one, we're going to do the right side. And it's basically the same area between the last 2 sections. believe she casts this 4 times now. It's on her last health. Yep, last one. Then we're gonna run to the spot. And that's it. Mash A, press B, and get out of there. This brings us to the last and final boss, which is Merlock. And he has a really cool set of temple maps. In fact, the hardest level in the game, in my opinion, is Ancient Fate, which is this one right here. But here is Merlock. The Merlock is the last boss, which means that when we are doing a run, we will end the time on the last hit that kills or damages, beats, whatever word you want to use, Merlock. So you would end time on the last hit of Merlock. Now, Merlock has the most amount of stuff going on, like, in the fight. You'll see what I mean soon. But he's very, very, very simple. So, in his cycle, he has 3 phases. The first phase is kind of like a base phase where a bunch of things are being thrown on the stage or at the stage and at you, and you just have to run around. And you also have the blocks of the stage popping in and out, and if you fall, you die. The second part is where he turns himself into a tornado while the base stuff is happening and chases you around. The tornado, I'll mention it ahead of time, the manipulation. So you can manipulate the tornado by getting close to it and then running around and moving around it. Not that hard, it's not that fancy. And then finally, his last phase where you can actually injure him is where he summons 4 copies of himself to all 4 corners of the stage and then casts like a firewall spell. Only one of those copies will actually be him, and only one of those copies can actually injure. The way to tell is it will either be the largest copy and or the copy with the shiny gem necklace. Cool? So let me show you what I mean. So this is the first base stage. See, the floor is falling away and fireballs are being tossed at you. There's this tornado. Not a big deal if you get hit by the tornado. And then here's where he summons it. Do you see? That big one with the necklace. The glowing, shining, glowing necklace. That's it. Now, he doesn't get too much harder on each stage. I think, like, the events get a little more violent, but as you'll get used to fighting him, it won't make much of a difference anyways. So, we're going to progress through the rest of the fight. And you kind of just keep an eye on everything. You'll get more and more used to it. A quick tip, though, is you'll see, like, for example, those arrows, they shoot always in the middle. So if you're in a corner of a block, you won't get hit by them. And the fireballs are similar too. Just little tips to keep it a little easier on you. Alright, so that one was the glowing one, or the shiny one. Now he only has 1 health left. And so time would end right when he gets hit last. See? So not the correct one, so it didn't work. That's the biggest one. You'll see if you were the pause there that none of them had like a shiny necklace, but he was the largest one. That's why I said sometimes it ends up being just the largest one. And so time would end as soon as you hit him there. And he goes like, "Urgh," and he falls back. So that's when time would end. And that's the run. Not a very long run. It's like, as I said, like a custom category that I made up to get some enjoyment out of the game and being able to run the game or run a category of the game on a faster time. The current fastest time on record is mine, my 2x, which is Pretty hard to get, I think. I don't know if there's 1x possibility, but I'd like to see it. It is a little tricky. So the one thing I didn't mention about Merlock that I'm recalling now is that what clone is the correct one? It seems to be like the biggest form of RNG for this run overall. I don't see I don't see a pattern for it. And I don't see a way to manipulate it that way you can make one of them that one. And so I think if you're able to get a lot of right guesses, because you will generally run to a corner when you hit them, then you can have a chance of getting a really good time. All right. So that's the run. The run's a fantastic run. If you want to try out for yourself, the last little tidbit, of course, would be the splits. So I have splits on game start, Bernadette, Beagle Boys, Magica, and Merlock. On game start, it is right here. So as soon as you press the start button, you would press and start the timer. And then the timer, I split on the loading screen to each boss fight. And then I finally split on the last hit of Merlock, as does the main category. The main category splits on the last hit of Merlock. Cool. So that's it for the tutorial. All right, everybody. That's going to be all for the tutorial. It was really fun making it. It's very interesting. It's my first video on the channel that's not just a run or a gameplay. If you do want to see my 828 run, which was actually retimed to an 827.80, it is posted on my channel, and I'll probably have it linked down in the description below. If you want to, ask me questions or anything, I tend to stream on Twitch at least 3 times a week. And if you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing on YouTube or following me on Twitch. Would go a long way. Thank you all so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And I hope to see you all in the next one. If there's lots of hype or people enjoy this tutorial, I'm down to make more tutorials in the future for other runs that I do, including the main category of this one. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.